Hey guys, what's good? Welcome back to JDB Selects, round 19 in the books. Moving on to round 20 this week, which means we're super close to finals footy. Only 7 more rounds to go. Super excited for that. The race for the top 8 is heating up. It should be a great end to the season. But before we get stuck into my round 20 tips, let's have a look back at how we did last week. So last week we tipped 4 out of 5 games. The only game we missed was the Dogs and the Bunnies. Full credit to the Dogs, they needed to show something after being embarrassed by the Knights last week, and they certainly did that despite a late scare. But can't complain with 4 out of 5, we go again this week. Now, if you don't know by now, we are running a subscribers tipping comp. All the details to join are shown on screen, so get involved if you're keen. And speaking of the tipping comp, Jared68 has moved back up into top spot, knocking off Abdullah. Congrats to Jared68, I think he got a perfect round last week with a 0 margin as well, so super impressive round for Jared68. Good luck to everyone in the tipping comp again this week. But before we get into my round 20 tips, I just want to say that we are less than 200 subscribers away from 10,000. That means most likely this week we're going to hit the big 5-figure mark. If you are watching right now and you aren't subscribed, do me a favor, do yourself a favor, hit that subscribe button, get on the JDB Selects train. There's no stopping us, and that's all down to you guys with your support. Man, I can't thank you all enough. So let's get stuck into my tips for round 20. So there are only 7 games this week, as this is another Origin affected round, and things kick off on Friday night with the 14th placed Newcastle Knights taking on the last placed West Tigers at McDonald Jones Stadium. Starting first with the Knights, Newcastle will be fresh off their final bye of the season, but the week prior had an absolute day out against the Bulldogs, scoring 66 unanswered points. The win was spearheaded by Kalen Ponga, who was near perfect, converting all 11 tries, running for over 150 metres with 3 try assists, 3 line break assists and 9 tackle breaks. Phoenix Crossland was also unreal, having his season's best performance, but the big storyline from that game was Bradman Best, who ran for over 200 metres on his way to securing a maiden NRL hat-trick in a performance that earned him a debut for New South Wales in Game 3. It was a crucial win for Adam O'Brien and his men, who had been on the wrong end of some slim defeats over the past month, and just highlights how good the Knights can be when they are firing on all cylinders. And as for the Tigers needed to show something after being embarrassed by the Cowboys, and despite losing 32 points to 12 to Cronulla, I thought they did pretty well. The Tigers' effort was much improved and even managed to head into the sheds locked at 12 all. Unfortunately, the turning point was Tommy Talau's second try being taken away by the bunker, which would have seen them draw level, and unfortunately it was all downhill from there. I thought Brandon Wakeham had one of his better games of the season, with just a few bad bounces of the ball going against him. Jareen Buller was dangerous with ball in hand, and John Bateman got through a ton of work. Alex Twile will return to the fray this week, but the Tigers' injury woes continue, with Dane Laurie, Nofaluma and Naden all in doubt for this weekend. Looking at the two sides head to head, the Tigers have a decent record in Newcastle, winning 4 of the past 6 games there, but the Knights have won the last 3 straight, including a 2-point win this season back in round 2. I do like the Knights in this one, so I am going to take the Knights 13+. I think the Knights' backline will be too big and strong for the Tigers' edges, who have struggled to handle big bodies. Ponga vs Buller is obviously an incredible matchup to keep your eyes on, but I do think Newcastle will be well rested from the bye and too good at home. Moving to the first of 3 Saturday fixtures, starting first with the 15th placed Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs taking on the 2nd placed Brisbane Broncos at Belmore Sports Ground. Starting first with the Dogs, Canterbury had their backs up against the wall after being embarrassed 66 points to nil by the Knights last week, and came out with a point to prove against the depleted Rabbitohs outfit and held on to win 36 points to 32. The addition of Toby Sexton at 7 and Burden at 6 worked wonders, with Sexton seemingly slotting in seamlessly and taking a lot of pressure off Matt Burton, who was near perfect off the boot, which ultimately proved to be the difference. It was a much improved performance from their forward pack, who ran and tackled with a much improved effort and intensity. However, despite looking to have the game wrapped up early, the Dogs did fade in the second half and almost blew it, but full credit to Canterbury. They were the better side for a majority of the game, and they did deserve to come away with the win. And as for the Broncos, Brisbane, they had their second bye last week, but the week prior kept their perfect record over crosstown rivals the Dolphins, pulling away late to win 24 points to 16. It wasn't a pretty win by any means, with the Broncos clearly missing Reece Walsh on attack, but a brilliant hat-trick from Selwyn Cobbo and a try-double from Herbie Farnworth were enough to get them home. It's quite funny really. A few weeks ago I said the Broncos were in a really advantageous position with no major injuries on their roster and still 2 byes to come, but that's all changed pretty rapidly and they now find themselves without Walsh, Haas, Ricky, Flegler and Catewell for at least the next few weeks. The Broncos though, they have shown that they can win without their stars as they did against the Warriors, but it has to be said that the Broncos have started to get a bit yippy, and with the run home including the Rabbits, Eels, Storm and Cowboys, I'm sure many Broncos fans will be getting flashbacks to last year's collapse. Looking at the two sides head to head, this will be the first time these two sides have met at Belmore Sports Ground since 1998, and the Broncos have a historical 66% win rate there. Brisbane have also won 5 of the past 6, that includes 4 straight, but have lost 4 of their last 5 games against the Dogs in Sydney. Despite the stats, I do like the Broncos of this one, so I am going to take Brisbane by 1-12. Despite missing a handful of their stars, they still have plenty of others, and the Dogs showed last week that they may have more points in them with Toby Sexton, but they did still concede 30 points, so I think the Broncos will be able to make them pay. Moving now to the second game on Saturday, we have the 10th placed Manly Sea Eagles taking on the 9th placed North Queensland Cowboys at 4 Pines Park. Starting first with the Sea Eagles, Manly will no doubt come off the bye with a renewed confidence after they defended their way to a gritty 18-16 point win over the Sydney Roosters. That game against the Roosters was a prime example of the stats not telling the full story, as Manly enjoyed nearly 60% of possession and completed at 86%, but watching it live it did feel like the Roosters were all over them and were probably the better side on the night. DCE at 34 years of age continues to defy time, showing unmatched effort, scoring a try-double and essentially single-handedly keeping Manly in the contest. I thought Manly's forward pack were also a lot better after a few disappointing weeks, and also Ruben Garrick was dynamic at fullback in Turbo's absence, but their biggest problem is consistency, something they've struggled with all season. And as for the Cowboys, North Queensland are also fresh off a bye and a record-breaking 74-0 win over the West Tigers, righting the wrongs after being on the wrong end of a similar spanking from the Tigers not too long ago. It was always going to be the case that the Cowboys would come out firing, and boy did they. Scotty Drinkwater was unbelievable, running for nearly 250 metres, scoring a try-double with 5 try assists and a whopping 4 line break assists. All of the Cowboys' origin stars had a field day, but none more so than Jeremiah Nanai, who ran for a whopping 226 metres with 9 tackle breaks and a meat pie of his own. It's crazy to think that just a few weeks ago the Cowboys were like running 16th on the ladder, and now they're just outside the 8 and looking like a serious competition threat that they were last year. Looking at the two sides head to head, the Sea Eagles have won 4 of the past 5 games, but the Cowboys have a pretty impressive record at 4 Pines Park, having won 7 of their last 9 games there, including 4 of the past 5. I do like the Cowboys here, so I am going to take the Cowboys 13+. I think the 13+ though does depend on whether their origin players back up, which I'm assuming they are. And even if they don't, the Cowboys will still have the likes of Dearden, Drinkwater and Jason Taumalolo, so should still get the job done either way. And the final game on Saturday has the 13th placed Sydney Roosters hosting the 4th placed Melbourne Storm at the SCG. Starting first with the Roosters, the Chooks are fresh off a bye but were previously defeated by Manly 18 points to 16. It was a much improved defensive performance from the Roosters, who only conceded 3 tries with 1 being an intercept, but again did struggle to fire on attack, and their weaker kicking game meant they were always behind on both possession and field position. The other big area of focus for the Roosters needs to be their discipline, as they conceded 8 penalties to Manly's 3 and 10 errors, which has meant they've struggled to build pressure on sides and forced the likes of Joey Manu, Tedesco and Carey to come up with Hail Mary plays that occasionally come off instead of earning the right through sustained pressure. Good news though for the Roosters, who have been dealing with a ton of injuries. They will be boosted by the returns of Joseph Suali'i, Connor Watson, Turpin, Billy Smith, and Egan Butcher, who are all expected to be available this weekend. And as for the Storm, Melbourne blew a 14-0 lead against the Panthers back in round 18 to go down 34 points to 16 in what was one of the club's biggest ever collapses, which is pretty impressive considering it's only 14 points. The Storm got on the board early through Harry Grant and jagged another when Nelson Asafa-Solomona was controversially awarded another. However, from that point onwards, it was all the Panthers as Melbourne's defence and discipline capitulated. The Storm could only manage a 67% completion rate, missing almost 50 tackles with 12 errors. Their middles were also dominated by the Panthers, with no Storm forward cracking the 100 metre mark, which has been one of their biggest flaws this season since losing the likes of Felice Kaufusi and the Bromwich brothers. Will Warbrick is also expected to be named to play this week after being starched in heavy contact from Isaac Tungo. Looking at the two sides head to head, Melbourne, they have won 6 of the past 7 games against the Roosters. They've also won 2 of the 3 games at the SCG and have won 4 of the past 6 games against the Roosters in Sydney. This will also be the second time these two sides have met this year. They met back in round 6 with the Storm running away with it 28 points to 6. Oh, this one, I think this one could be a make or break for the week. But I am going to go the upset here and take the Roosters by 1-12. I think the Roosters have a fairly full strength pack, and I do think that the Roosters middles can match it and or beat Melbourne's middles, which has proven to be their pain point this season. I think the Roosters are due a win. I'm not confident about it, but I am going to take the Roosters 1-12. Alright, now moving to the first of 3 Sunday fixtures, starting first with the 6th placed NZ Warriors taking on the 3rd placed Cronulla Sharks at the Go Media Stadium here in Auckland. Starting first with the Warriors, the Kiwis bounced back from a poor showing against the Rabbitohs with a convincing 46-10 point win over a depleted Parramatta Eels side. The Warriors managed to shake off a patchy start and score 4 tries in 13 minutes, with Luke Metcalf and Marcelo Montoya finding little resistance on the right edge. Despite enjoying nearly 60% of possession, the Warriors were far from the best, making a whopping 16 errors and completing at just 72%. It was, however, the largest total the Warriors have scored in the first half since 2014, and although they didn't really go on with it in the second 40, their lead was never threatened by the Eels. The win wasn't without its issues though, as Dylan Walker was unable to finish the game with a forearm injury, but the good news is that Josh Curran will make his return from suspension this week. And as for the Sharks, Cronulla secured their 10th win of the season with a 36-12 point victory over the West Tigers. While the scoreline flattered the Sharks in the end, it did take them almost 50 minutes to pull away, with Hines having a fairly off night, converting just 3 of their 7 tries and coming up with a few howlers with ball in hand. Sifa Talakai continued his recent run of form, scoring 2 tries, running for a game-high 181 metres with 6 tackle breaks, while Zioni Katoa cashed in on the Dragons' abysmal left edge, bagging a hat-trick in the final play of the game. It was another decent showing for the Sharks, who were missing some of their big men in the middle, with Hamlin Uele, Finucane and Hunt all unavailable, which should mean that they will only get better when they return to full strength. Looking at the two sides head-to-head, the Sharks, they've won 6 of the past 8 games and have a really good record in NZ, winning 5 of the past 6 games here. That includes 3 straight. However, the Warriors pulled off one of their greatest comebacks the last time these two sides met, coming back from 20-0 down to win 32 points to 30 in Cronulla on Old Boys Day. Man, I tell you what, it's been so nice this season to be able to tip the Warriors and not feel too guilty about it, so I am going to do it again this week. I'm going to take the Wars 1-12 at home. I think the Warriors will be near full strength, and they've been obviously playing some really good footy lately. They've already beaten the Sharks once this year, and hopefully if the weather stays nice, they should be able to secure another win at home. The second game on Sunday has the 12th placed Redcliffe Dolphins taking on the 1st placed Penrith Panthers at KO Stadium. Starting first with the Finns, the Dolphins secured a crucial come-from-behind Golden Point win over the Gold Coast Titans, 23 points to 21. It was a great game to finish the round, with both sides completing well and going tit-for-tat for the full 85 minutes. It was a complete team performance from the Dolphins, with 12 players running for over 100 metres, but I thought personally both Jared Wallace and Anthony Milford were outstanding in their returns from suspension. The Dolphins should have had the game wrapped up earlier, as Sean O'Sullivan crashed over in the dying stages, only to drop the ball and give the Titans a chance. It was a shame the game ended the way it did, with the Dolphins being awarded a penalty for offside right in front of the sticks, but it is what it is. Finn Diesel, Felice Kaufusi comes back into the side this week after suffering a head knock, but Jeremy Marshall-King is unlikely to be named as he continues to deal with that shoulder injury. And as for the Panthers, Penrith are coming off their second bye of the year, but the week prior pulled off one of their most impressive wins of the season, coming back from 14-0 down to beat the Melbourne Storm in Melbourne, 34 points to 16. It was all Melbourne for the first 30 before 3 quick tries to Stephen Crichton, Isaac Tungo and Liam Martin lit a fire under the Panthers and saw them miraculously head into the sheds in front. It was all Penrith in the second 40, with Isaac Tungle having an unbelievable second half, scoring a double, setting up another and breaking 13 tackles. Luai was also at his elusive best, setting up 2 tries and constantly asking questions of the Storm's defence, but surprisingly was dropped from the New South Wales Blues side for Game 3. In terms of head-to-head stats, there are no stats for this one, as this is the first time the Finns and the Panthers will go at it, but I do like the Panthers in this one, 13+. It obviously does depend on whether they rest their origin players, but either way, the Panthers will get the job done. And the final game on Sunday has the 7th placed Parramatta Eels hosting the 11th placed Gold Coast Titans at CommBank Stadium. Starting first with the Eels, Parramatta were always up against it last week, with a ton of their key players either suspended, injured or involved in origin, but they were blown off the park by the Warriors 46 points to 10. The Eels were given plenty of chances early, with the Warriors coming up with plenty of errors, but their attack could only find their way across the line once. It was pretty much all the Warriors from there on out, with the Eels seemingly unable to deal with the speed. There isn't too much more to say about the performance, but we can't read too much into it given the outs, and I have no doubt they'll be looking for a big bounce back this week with all of their origin stars expected to back up. And as for the Titans, the Gold Coast suffered a heartbreaking golden point loss to the Dolphins to close out round 19. The Titans showed a ton of heart, especially as they were without Brimson, Fafita, Mo and Tino, but they did really lack their impact through the middle and on the edges. Jaden Campbell was unbelievably electric at fullback, running for a crazy 315 metres, with 9 tackle breaks as well as 2 line breaks. I also thought that both Brian Kelly and Philip Sami had some of their best performances of the year out on the wings. It does feel like the Titans have turned a corner since Justin Holbrook was shown the door, and with no more disruptions from Origin, they will be hoping to make a run into the top 8, but they do have a fairly difficult run home, which includes games against the Cowboys, Storm, Warriors, Panthers and Sharks. Looking at the two sides head to head, Parramatta, they've won 7 of the past 8 games, with the Gold Coast snapping a 7-game losing streak earlier this season during Magic Round. The Eels do have a solid record against the Titans in Sydney, having only lost 2 of their 7 games there at a 70% win rate. I do like the Eels 13+ here. I think the Eels will want to put on a big performance following last week's disappointment, and with all of their origin stars expected to back up, I do think that they can get around the Gold Coast with ease. Bang, and just like that, we are done for another week. In summary, I am taking the Knights 13+, the Broncos 1-12, Cowboys 13+, Roosters 1-12, Warriors 1-12, Panthers 13+, and the Parramatta Eels 13+. Thank you as always for watching. I appreciate all the support. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed, hit that subscribe button if you are new here, and let me know who you're tipping for round 20 in the comments below. Much love as always, see you in the next one.